Okay, so I'm Kate Brew, and I've organized this, Marcus, you're already talking. Okay, I organized this team because I think we're gonna get to a very interesting topic, interesting to me, is soft skills. Are they really soft or are they really hard? You know, that's how, and you hear the adjective soft and it sounds kind of wimpy. So we're gonna get to all these issues. First, I want everybody, starting with Wendy, to introduce themselves and to the audience, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy Nather. I lead the advisory CISO team at Duo Security, which is now part of Cisco. And as far as soft skills go, I have hacked some of the preeminent hackers in the world because they never saw me coming.
Wow, what do you do to follow that? Chip Coy, I'm a security consultant, have been for quite a while. Have worked at a number of commercial and state governments, and yeah, like that. And it's one of the reasons that I chimed in on this is there was a lot of discussion of, well, do you want to stay technical or do you want to become a manager? It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are those mutually exclusive?
Cool.
So I'm Marcus. I'm just I don't know if anybody. I'm just a country boy trying to figure out how to make it in a big city. And so I started a company a couple years ago. We just sold the company about 2 weeks ago to a company called ReliQuest. So I'm part of ReliQuest now. I'm doing my title there is called Enterprise Architect. I'm going to get to hack a lot more and code a lot more. So I'm really pumped with moving on and getting this far. I definitely use a lot of soft skills.
Hi, I'm Tanya Janka. You may remember me from this morning where I told you, oh, you should have soft skills. And I'm from Security Sidekick.
Okay, awesome. So what I'd like you to do now is, starting with Wendy and going down the row, is take one soft skill that pops into your mind and describe it. I'm trying to get at what are soft skills because it's a little bit fuzzy. So go ahead and name one.
Yeah, soft skills to me encompass, it sounds manipulative, but actually building relationships with people so that they will want to do what you need them to do, whether it is as a parent getting your kid to get potty trained and using a combination of bribery and threats and obfuscation and deception to get them to do that, or whether it's trying to convince an auditor that no, you really did address this problem even if they don't recognize the words that you're using. So maybe persuasion would be part of that.
Oh, good, you didn't take the one I was going to talk about. If there's one thing that I keep running into over and over again, it's folks who are great pen testers, application evaluators, and they don't want to write. So, and when they do write, they get this written diarrhea where I'm going through pages and pages and pages trying to find a point. Like, don't do that. Make the point in the first paragraph. Spend as many pages as you need to back it up, but I don't care about your background. I don't care about your methods. I want to know what happened and what it means. So
I would say that a couple of soft skills, leadership, communications, and communication is definitely the top one, because if you communicate properly, you're going to be able to write well, and you're going to be able to get people to do what they need to do. So I would say communication is definitely my top soft skill.
I would say my top skill is, or that I look for, is empathy, specifically the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes so you can understand where they're coming from. Many times I've worked with teams where they only care about getting their business unit done and at the peril of everyone else. And if you can't just for a second look at things from other people's point of views, it's hard to come to any sort of compromise.
That's really nice. So does anybody have any other examples of soft skills that they would like to point out?
I think one that it has been on display all day today, when you've seen people talking, is the ability to talk, in public, to explain in language that people can understand, to be engaging, even though there are a whole bunch of you staring at me and there's only one of me staring at you. But creating a connection, and that's often underrated when you are bringing somebody in, when you're trying to hire somebody with that skill who can make that sort of connection one-to-many as well as one-to-one.
I would also say cooperation, because, people that can't cooperate. They're really good if they want to just work for themselves and never work with other people. But for the rest of us, like 99% of people that have to interact with other humans, cooperation is essential.
So I think conflict resolution is super important soft skill to have. Definitely, I think that one of the skills that definitely in the cybersecurity industry that we have is we're pretty much all smart, probably. Most people are some people. I think everybody I work with pretty much is super smart. Everybody's smarter than me, but sometimes if you're smart, you can't take criticism. And so how do you resolve those conflicts? And I think that's something that, you look on Twitter and you see people blowing up because they can't resolve conflict. So that's a big one.
I never thought of that. That's neat. Yeah.
So the other one that, as security professionals, we tend to skip right by getting whoever we're working with convinced about the problem. We keep trying to essentially sell them the solution. And if we stop for just a few minutes and focus on everybody getting to agreement that we have a problem, then it's just a matter of picking a solution. But if you can't agree that there is a problem, you're just going to spin your wheels and everybody's going to get frustrated and yell at each other, and no empathy, no cooperation, no nothing.
Okay. Any you're good? Okay. So by focusing on soft skills, are you diluting your technical prowess? Any thoughts on that in any order that you like? Because you really, instead of being 100% technical, heads down, learning all you can in a particular area, you're kind of, generalizing. And is that healthy? Is that good? What do you think the balance is?
I was going to say, why, as Chip was saying, why does that need to be mutually exclusive? It doesn't at all. And I suspect, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the people who think that technical is the opposite of soft think that also that blue is the opposite of pink, and that masculine is the opposite of feminine, and ne'er the twain shall meet, and oh my gosh, you won't catch me doing this other thing because that's antithetical to who I am. And that's the kind of person that is the most difficult to work with.
Yeah, actually, I remember when that memo came out from that guy at Google, and he was talking about how basically communication skills made women less good at coding. I'm like, oh my God, I pity the poor people that have to work with you because you sound like an ass. I'm just being able to talk or socialize with other humans, that's a flaw. Okay. Just immediately I was like, oh, I don't need to read the rest. But I did mostly so I could make fun of it. But yeah, I think that there are people out there that if they can recognize in themselves that they need to improve their soft skills. When I was younger, I actually on purpose worked on my sociability skills because I was too blunt and too direct. And people, I'm way less blunt and direct now. Can you imagine that? Wow. Yeah, I worked on it because I would just say exactly what I thought. And it apparently is intimidating and terrifying. But anyway, I recognized it as an issue and then I worked on it. And I think people are willing to work on things, then you can become really fully rounded and awesome. And I don't think my technical skills lacked. It's just an extra thing I knew I needed to work on.
So, sci-fi fans in the house. Bob Heinlein put it best. You should be able to lead, you should be able to follow, you should be, a whole, and I'm going to mangle the quote, but it ended with, specialization is for insects.
Oh, nice.
So if somebody says, oh, no, I can't learn that other stuff, I want to stay technical, like, just say specialization is for insects. And then we get to all explain it to HR later, but that's...
Yeah, so I don't, definitely, on the technical side, I kind of look at it like there's a lot of sayings like, you know, if a tree falls in a forest, nobody's around, does the tree really fall? So I would say, like, you can be mad technical, but if nobody ever sees your work or you're not able to communicate something, did it even happen? You know, you're gonna be in your cube all day doing whatever you're doing, but if you're not able to properly communicate and tell people that story, tell people why they should do this, tell people don't just issue edicts from you know, just go explain to people, hey, this is why you need to have a password manager or whatever you're trying to do. You can't do it in isolation and you just can't send stuff out. It should be two-way dialogue. So even if you're like the most technical person in the world, if you're not able to communicate that in a way that's consumable, you know, you're going to have a terrible life probably.
So here's an example that everyone can try at home. Try to explain to somebody why their code is bad without pissing them off. There you go. Technical, soft skills at the same time. Go off and do it. I would say that not having soft skills it does present a challenge for them, and the ones that I know want to work on it because they realize it does present a problem to them. If they choose not to work on it, it doesn't make them bad, but it does mean that it is going to be more challenging for them.
And by the way, the horrible life thing, that was just me being overly crazy. Yeah, my bad. So I apologize for that if I offended anybody. But what I'm trying to say is that we all have to try our best. You know, we're all born with certain skills, traits, characteristics, and what that does is it makes us, right? But I think everybody should try to strive to be the best us, you know, whatever that may be, and figure out how you communicate best, you know, and then you're gonna be successful whatever you do.
So, directly to your point, what do we do about people who there are challenges when they're put up in front of customers, there are challenges when they're put up in front of executive management, but they're brilliant. Like, well, this is where you better hope that there's somebody somewhere in the management chain who doesn't believe that management and technical are mutually exclusive, because that leads to that brilliant person getting fired. Whereas with some proper management support, they can still do brilliant work and it can be properly recognized, they can get promoted, all sorts of things, but it's gonna take support from other people.
Any follow-up?
Can I answer too? I've worked with all sorts of types of people, and if someone's willing to have effort, things can go well, even if like they're super clumsy, or you know, if they're on the spectrum and they have certain things that just don't work for them because of real reasons. All of those things, I feel, are things that you can totally work with and get to where you need to go, especially if you yourself have the social skills in order to recognize, okay, so this person is not, you know, getting my jokes or whatever, and so you can adjust yourself and your communication style so that you can work more effectively together. However, there are some people in our industry, just like every industry, who don't have like something that is restricting them from understanding social situations. They're just a jerk. And sometimes I've had people say like, oh, that person's on the spectrum, and I'm like, don't make fun of people with autism, because that's what you're doing. You're like, you're blaming it on them, and that's not what's happening here. That person is a jerk. It's not the same. And so I think sometimes we need to be a bit more sensitive when we make like accusations like that, like a lot of people, so I'm dyslexic, and a lot of people are like, oh, I spelled this wrong, I'm so dyslexic. I'm like, no, you just made an error, and that's okay, right? And like, if someone's a jerk, I don't think we should be like, oh, well, they're on the spectrum. I'm like, no, dude. Just that I mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely not. And in my experience, people on the spectrum know that they have difficulty connecting with people, and they are desperate to reach out and make those connections. They want to do that. They're not like, well, I am the way I am, and that's just too bad. I think some of the jerky behavior that we see is a function of a very different societal dynamic, where if you are seen as successful in status in a certain way, you start to believe that you can behave however you want to, and that is that has nothing to do with autism.
Yeah, on the communication side, I remember like, I think it was like English 101 or whatever. Basically, and even like when you do public speaking, or you take classes on how to train people, the first rule of that is always know who you're talking to. Like, know your audience. And that's what any public speaking thing would tell you. So I kind of know my people. This is my family, the whole hacker family. So, but everybody that you interact with, and that's where the empathy term comes into play. I know that term is beat up a lot, because it means you soften, whatever, right? And it's like, what's crazy about that is like, empathy just means understanding who you're talking to. And if somebody is, as they say the term, on the spectrum, you kind of understand, all right, this is who I'm talking to. But again, there is there's no excuse for being a bad person or hurting other people. There's no excuse for it.
A million women on the internet have informed me, I don't have time to teach every single person that says a sexist thing why they're wrong, because we'll all work all the time, and it'll be on just a couple people. Do you know what I mean? So I think it really depends on, but professionally, if you're working with people, like I said earlier, I'm pretty direct. So I'll be like, I didn't like that you said that. And they're usually just stare at me. I'm like, here's why. And they're usually pretty uncomfortable, but then they think about it, and we usually get along better.
But your demeanor is very kind, and you're smiling.
I don't know if I smile. I think like sometimes people can't tell if I'm upset because I don't yell and scream. I like never flip out. And so I'll tell people, like when I call customer service, I'll be like, I'm irate. And they're like, oh, I'm like, no, like I'm very angry. But I don't believe in abusing nice people that have these help desk jobs. Like, it's not your fault. You didn't come over here and break my things. Then we'd have words. But like, there's no need for me to be a jerk. But could you tell them, like, write in the notes, customer was irate. Mm-hmm. It works.
Well, so how do you deal with somebody who's being a jerk, if you believe they're capable of doing good work and for whatever reason they're not? Is that the definition of jerk, I think?
No,
it's
being a-hole.
Well, okay. But
others, intentionally hurtful, discouraging of others, negative.
Well, it's the...
It's closer to like, how do you incentivize them?
Well, so you're doing this well and that well and this other great thing, and you could do these other great things, except the path you're on, somebody's just going to shoot you dead. So let's try and fix that part so that you can do all these other wonderful things. I don't know, is that the Dilbert pointy-haired boss approach?
So anybody that you ever work with in life, family, teams, organization, you got to make sure that everybody's trying to achieve the same goal. There's a really good book called From Good to Great that talks about this. As long as the people in the organization are on the same path, this is where we want to get. Then, look, hey, I would say, if you want to get to this goal, if we both believe in this goal, we're not going to get there with you behaving like this. And so if they believe that you're all if you're a team, they got to play for the championship. I mean, that's why certain teams suck year after year, because the organization don't care about winning the championship or not. I hate to be totally a dude and go to the sports analogies, sports balls. But yeah, so what it is like, from what is the goal? We're all going towards this goal, and that's what it is. Also, I believe you should have some sense of radical transparency, is a term people have. You should be able to tell somebody they're a jerk. If you can't tell somebody that I don't know if I can work with people. I can't just be a little bit transparent with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're acting like a jerk, man. Like, and they just gotta take it.
Well, at Duo, one of our official branded corporate values is being kinder than necessary. And so, I would not go up to say to somebody, hey, you're acting like a jerk, even though the transparency is very transparent, it's not very kind. So one of the things I've worked on with a coach is, one thing she taught me about is called Nonviolent Communication, which is not where you refrain from punching somebody over the head, but you stay with fact-based statements like, you said this. When you said this, maybe you didn't realize it, but it had the effect of this. Now, I don't think this is what you intended, is it? Because if you didn't intend it, this is what happened, and let's see if we can avoid this in the future. So, you bring them in as a problem that that you're both facing the same problem that you want to solve together. And that's different from, I don't know who heard Josh Sokol's talk earlier today, where he came out and said, somebody came up to him and said, you were a dick. So, that, sometimes that works with people and sometimes it doesn't. So, but luckily there are a lot of tools that you can learn to do the right kind of communication with somebody to give them that feedback.
I'll add one other thing, and that's, all joking aside on the getting shot dead thing, is take them to the consequences. It's like, if this continues, here's the path you're on, the ghost of Christmas future sorts of thing. And say, look, you've still got time to change your path. If you can do things just a little more over this way, you're going to be a lot more effective and you'll still have a job.
Cool.
As a manager, I was a little blunt.
I want to try to steam ahead a little bit because I want to be sure we cover. What would you recommend, people, us, do in InfoSec and other AppSec to improve their soft skills? What are your recommendations of how to really get it done, how to make progress?
For starters, if you ask a question, we brought candy. So I hope that incentivizes you. Oh, yes, she's got some candy, just so you know that there's bribery. The book that Wendy mentioned, Nonviolent Communication, I read that, and like when you start a book and you're like, but someone was like, you should read it. So I did, and then I got into it more and more as I continued. And then I have 5,000 cousins, and one of my cousins called and we had this big fight. And she was really pissed at me about something that I had not realized for a while. And then because I could listen to it from this vantage point of, instead of her being she said something pretty snarky, I was like, how long has this hurt your feelings for? And you didn't tell me. Oh. Why didn't you tell me that you were upset all this time? And she's just totally stopped and was like, and I don't think she realized, but if I hadn't read the book, I probably would have just been like, I'll fling that barb right back at you. You want to be childish? Let's be childish. But that book really helped me kind of see oh, she's coming at me with pain. Where is this coming from? We're like BFFs. Where is this coming from? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's a great story. Yeah, that's a great story. I would say in general, if you're depending on which kind of soft skills you're trying to develop, there are a lot of different ways. There are books, there's mentoring, there's coaching, where you actually pay a professional to work with you one-on-one to develop in the areas that you want to develop. But with a lot of it, it has to be practice. You have to have muscle memory. You have to be able to work through the habit of responding in certain ways to people, or asking them to do things in certain ways, or even thinking about understanding, getting more situational awareness around organizations and personal dynamics so that you can make a better plan for what you want to accomplish. So all of those things at a very high level are things you can do.
When I worked, so I used to work for the Canadian government, and I got into a management role, which I quickly vacated because it turns out that is hell. But this is a long story. But they sent me on all these communication courses, and one of the ones they put us with all these different people, and they're like, so no one's officially the leader, but you have to do this, and basically people just immediately, it turns out, I'm that leader type where I'm like, okay, well, how about this? And I'm the type where I ask everyone's opinion, and then we come up with a plan, and then we all agree, sort of thing. But some leaders are like, you will do as I say. But the lessons, like all the training they sent us through, was actually really incredible. I have no idea what's wrong with all those managers because because the training was amazing. I'm like, how'd you end up like that? But anyway.
Yeah, a similar story. So after being in IT for a decade and a half, somehow I ended up I had a project that got canceled, and I switched over to a more political group to figure out what the hell happened to my project. And I guess I missed a meeting because I ended up being a rep to some user group, and the first thing they did is send me off to video charm school. So, there's no fun like being recorded and critiqued by your peers. So talk about getting out of your comfort zone. But I think that's the big thing is what you do well, you do it well. You got to get out of your comfort zone. And a lot of the skills we talked about, certainly didn't come naturally to me, and they probably still don't. But you get out of your comfort zone, you learn something a little new, whether it's a communications course of one sort or another, or as simple as sitting down and reading one of the books. We need the last con reading list out of all this, because we've heard half a dozen books that probably are not sitting on all of our bookshelves, or if they have, they've got dust on them, and we need to actually read them someday. But the one that I keep going back to for that list is another one of these little thin books called Getting to Yes by the Harvard Negotiating Project. And it's really about getting agreement on the problem before you start trying to argue with people about which solution to pick.
A couple of other examples of soft skills and things you can do to learn them. One of them is being able to talk to the press to be interviewed, because your PR people generally, after they get to know you, they know who they can trust with an interview and who they can't. Like, God, don't put them in front. It's very difficult, especially if you're getting difficult questions, to be able to be engaging with the PR, with the journalist, and get them on your side and say, gosh, I wish I could answer that, but I'm not the right person to do it. Let me come back to you with this person. But in the meantime, what I can say is this wonderful thing about our company, and do it in a genuine way. Or as my dad used to say, if you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. That's another kind of skill where there is PR and media training that you can take for that sort of thing. Another great place where soft skills are very useful is in usability, UX design and engineering, where if you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, especially somebody who's disabled, somebody who is non-technical, somebody from a different part of the world with different cultural assumptions about what they're seeing on the screen, you are going to make the technology so much better. So, there's a huge, I guess we're all arguing that there isn't a technical versus soft skills, that these all blend in together, and in fact, applying the right soft skills can make your technical skills even better.
Wendy, I just have to pipe in here. I'm not really on the panel, but
yes, you are.
I love the definition of product manager as really grief counselor, because it's true. Yes. Anyway, go ahead. I think it was Marcus next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say something I don't see a lot of, and this is a soft skill. Two things: just apologizing, and of course, like being able to apologize if you mess up. Like earlier, I apologize because I didn't, I said something crazy, and I just bought that book on Nonviolent Communications because I need that so much. This is like therapy for me. I'm so hood, it's amazing. So basically, being able to ask for forgiveness when you mess up is a lost art. And also, on the flip side of that, forgiving people when they mess up is a lost art. And so we seem like we can't do that. Definitely online. I mean, and people go on about that there's a cancel culture, whatever you feel about that. But I do feel that we just forgot how to forgive each other if people mess up or say something wrong. And part of that empathy thing and this whole soft skill thing is that there's this perception that you have to do everything perfect. Nobody in this room is perfect. You're going to mess up. Say you're sorry. And if somebody says in a sincere apology, they didn't mean anything about it, just forgive them.
I love it. Owning our mistakes is so important. I have salvaged many relationships by saying, that was my fault, how can I fix this? Like at work, something happens, especially with security. Like, okay, so we dropped the ball on that, what can we do now? And what can we do in the future to make sure that that never ever happens again?
In IT, who here has never made a mistake? Go ahead, come on, somebody. Yeah, right. Yeah, in all humbleness with soft skills, you're wrong. We make mistakes in IT. What's the old saying? If builders built buildings the way programmers wrote programs, the first woodpecker to come along would destroy civilization. So, we're in the mistake business. So we got to take what we do in our nice technical world with stuff up on the screen. It's like, oh goodness, I screwed it up again, and take that to the human realm and be a little more forgiving of each other.
Just to put like a cap on my thoughts on that is we sometimes in security we have people so afraid to make a mistake. They're not gonna, if they clicked on something and they got owned, instead of coming and telling you, hey, I clicked on something, they're not gonna. It's about communications. They should have a policy to be able to come to you. You should be totally approachable as a security person in an organization. And that's a part like when the old classical. I feel like some of the old school technology I know, but when you're doing communications, you have to have an open socket, ready to listen for anybody coming inbound, and that's something that we're good at talking a lot, but we suck at listening.
Yeah.
That's so true.
I was just going to ask, one thing I didn't hear mentioned that I wanted to ask about because it related to one of my initiatives. Did y'all say that sitting in a customer-facing kind of like a meeting, let's say, with the sales team, with actual clients and customers is an effective way to build soft skills?
So the question was, is sitting in a meeting with customers, being customer-facing in your role, is that an effective way to build soft skills? Or tagging along and watching like how the salespeople work? I think if you want to learn the art of persuasion in sales, definitely you should watch salespeople because they're amazing. I don't know if I would think that was the best way. I have to say I've seen a lot of salespeople that make me unhappy and
Well, not just sales, but like tech support or
Tech support.
client success managers, people of that nature where they're dealing with people who have problems or could be irate and they want to talk it down first and then
I would suggest putting a little work in to acquire some skills in dealing with people who are paying the bills first, because being in a sales meeting and the lead sales guy says XYZ and you put your head down on the table because it was just so wrong, it's probably not the best way to build sales skills or stay employed. But a little learning in this area goes a long way. And hey, pregame it, chat with the salespeople. What is it you think you're going to tell these people? Oh, we're going to say the product does X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, you got 1 out of 3. Can we tune that up a little bit before you tell the customers? Better to do that before you're sitting in front of the customers than at the table.
But there was part of the question of just observing.
I would say
Come on, who in this room can observe when somebody's telling a blatant lie and not guffaw?
I think we're focusing a lot on sales.
well, check this out.
That aren't sales.
No, I don't think I think everybody in life, and I'm actually a tech guy who learned how to do sales, and I sold my own product or whatever, right? So I would say that at the root of it, we're all just trying to help each other out. And if you just have that mantra, if you're a salesperson, software person, help desk, cybersecurity, how can I help you out? How can we do this the best way we can do it? How can we do the solution the best way we can do it? How can I give you the right solution that you need? But I have to listen first. And that's what a great salesperson is always going to do. Listen, and then give you the solution the best that they can give you. And that's like life in general. My wife, my kids. You have to learn how to listen, and you have to give them what they want, for sure, and then sometimes what they need. I mean what they need, and then what they want.
Some of what you're talking about comes down to basic teamwork. Is everybody you have to have a little discussion beforehand such that everybody understands that we're not going to bayonet our buddies in front of the customer. And that can be tough. I mean, I can tell you that that's a lesson, particularly dealing with folks who were in customer support, sales, problem resolution, all those nice customer-facing roles. As a guy well behind the scenes, that took me a while to figure out.
To go back to your question, though, I do agree that training, like working with your teammates on other teams, for instance, like if you're a pen tester, sitting with a developer and helping them. Am I holding this incorrectly? It keeps cutting out.
I think that one's dying.
Yeah. Okay, well, just pretend you can all hear me. I do agree. Things that, like, other members of my team are doing is a great way to learn more about how they communicate and what they do and what their role is, so that you can understand and have empathy in your role. Like, I think part of why Hey, how's it going, Josh?
Thank you.
I think part of the reason why I'm good at working in AppSec is because I was a software developer so long, and I view those as my people, if that makes sense. And so I'm always like, how can I help you make your app secure? Like, I'm your helper. As opposed to sometimes like people that have not come from that angle, sometimes they have trouble understanding. So if you're trying to learn soft skills and you see someone who has awesome soft skills, observing them does sound like a brilliant idea, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree that, yes, observing in a lot of different, customer-facing or, interfacing roles, like a product manager who has to deal with, interface with so many different people in order to get one thing done or to get something out the door, or tech support, or sales, or any of these other things are great. But first, you have to see a model of what success looks like, because I know a lot of organizations where. Oh, thank you, Josh.
Now they're dangerous.
Yeah, now he's
Josh.
dangerous. You have to, I know a lot of organizations where you can watch what's going on, but they are not consciously developing the soft skills that are needed to be successful in that role. So if you see a salesperson who is very aggressive in front of the customer, and you happen to see them when they manage to close a deal, you'll think that those behaviors are what successful soft skills are like, and they might or they might not be. So. Look at other leaders around you, or managers, or people who people say, wow, so-and-so is really good. Kate is, she is brilliant at, calming down people, or, Matt is a fantastic manager, and, everybody knows it. You can talk to them and say, what's your secret? And if they are consciously developing certain skills, then you can say, great, where can I learn and practice those?
Yeah, and back to your point about speaking up and hitting the putting your head on the desk, that's a really good way when you don't know all the facts to get fired. It's because, especially if you're very junior and you blurt out what you believe to be the truth, it's very risky. Yeah.
3 million short in information security. Getting fired isn't necessarily so bad in this job area. But one of the things that we talked about, we've talked a couple of times about the manager versus technical. I think there's an assumption that managers are expert at some of these soft skills, when in most cases nothing could be farther from the truth. I've had a few good bosses, but many of them have resembled the pointy-haired boss from Dilbert. So it's one of the things that we do as a set of technical folks. If we say, no, we're going to stay technical, we're not going to learn that other stuff, is we're depriving the organization of people who know what the heck they're doing.
I feel like there's managers, there's leaders, and sometimes you get both of those traits in the same person, and it's magical. And I've had amazing managers, but that didn't really lead. I would do that usually. Or, amazing leaders that I can follow, but they didn't really do the management-y thing.
Yeah, I was going to mention there are also different styles of management. In one position, I was trained on different styles, where some people are, much more comfortable being coached, where you're encouraging them and you're teaching them what they need to know in order to be able to carry out, their responsibilities. There are other people who prefer delegation, where you just say, hey, here's something, go take care of it, and you leave them to do it the way they want to, and they're very happy with that. There are different combinations of that. I think another thing you can work on if you are managing people is to be able to manage each person in the skill that they like, in the style that they like the best, that they prefer. And also be able to manage upward in the style in which your supervisor prefers you to use.
I was in a job interview like a while ago, and the person that was doing the hiring asked me what my love languages were, so he could make sure he managed me well. And I'm like, I just need to hear like, good job.
I hope you didn't say it was touch, because that would have gotten you in a lot of trouble.
He's like, uh-oh. But there's like different types of communication, right? And some people, like a bonus will make them feel valued, and I like money in my bank account, just to be clear, but hearing I do a good job, it's like magical for me. And having your manager ask that, it's like, oh, you care. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one thing. So one of the books I like that taught me a lot of like soft related skills, and I definitely need some work for sure. But the 4 agreements. One of the 4 agreements is golly, it slipped me.
Memory's the second thing to go.
It is.
I forgot what the first is.
I was going to say, what's the
Be
first?
impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. That's the one that I was trying to think of, and that's the one I have to. And what's cool about the book is it also talks about how you talk to yourself inside your own head, and so that's something you got to make sure that you're good with yourself, and then you can go out and you can communicate to other people. So make sure that you're taking in positive stuff, and that's going to help you go a long ways. It's helped me for sure.
Cool. Okay. What do you think about the technical track and management track? Like IBM for years has had the IBM Fellow, and they're allowed to just basically do whatever they want because they're so brilliant technically that they can make as much as a VP with 500 people reporting to them, kind of thing. Do you think that works? And just perspective on what size of company it might work at, or if you don't think it works at all?
Do you mean like an individual contributor?
Yes, where you have an equal, but you don't have to manage people track.
Part of why I left the Canadian government is because I was sitting at the highest technical position for over a decade. And there was just nowhere for my career to go. And so I wasn't getting raises anymore, and like all I could do was just try cool new jobs and have like really cool high profile projects. And I was just like, I'm not even old yet at all. I saw like tons and tons. And they're like, yeah, you can retire in 18 years. I'm like, you think I'm gonna not have a promotion for 18 more years? And so I'm like, yeah, I gotta go. I'm gonna do bigger, better things. And they're just like, what? And I explained to them, if you don't have a place for that person to go and they have to go into management, some people love management. I'm glad, so you can do that job instead of me. But like, it's not for everyone. And yeah, you end up ending people's careers and they go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm at Cisco where we have an individual contributor or a technical track. I don't want to say that they're the opposite or that they're separate. There's a managerial track and an individual contributor track. And you can be a very technical manager, but if you're a manager, you're on a particular track up to certain grades. And if you're an IC, you get up, and you don't manage anybody, you can get up as high as, I think, fellow. I think Cisco has fellows. I haven't found that part out yet. I'm only a year in. But when Duo was acquired by Cisco, they couldn't figure out what to do with my team because we are all former CISOs, so we're very, highly placed technically, but I was only managing 4 people, and that didn't fit into the scales that they use to map roles from one to the other. So either I would have had to be a much lower rated manager managing these very senior technical people, or what they ended up doing was putting me on the same level as them technically in the IC track, and then flipping some bit that said I was also a manager so that I could see their stuff. But yeah, they weren't really sure how to make those two things match either.
I like what, I don't know who said it, but they were talking, somebody said that, so basically there's managers and leaders. I think that sometimes, yeah, those aren't the same people. So you definitely, individual contributors, they don't want to manage nobody. And sometimes you don't want them to manage anybody either.
Right.
For sure. So I think both are needed. And what's funny though is that sometimes those individual contributors can be the leaders. They can be the rock star that everybody wants to be like. And so sometimes they can be toxic. They make a lot of money, they can party all the time, and they're very influential in organizations. So sometimes those people can be the leader of an organization, but they don't have any management responsibilities. So as a manager, sometimes you can be not respected. I would say in some cases, but again, so if you have that going on, and I've seen it in person where we have rock star people, everybody wants to work with that person, everybody wants to hang out with that person, and then they would like totally ignore the manager. So that's why good communications inside an organization are critical. Tell your rock star, a rock star is cool, but they actually work for me. They can't be doing all that cool research that you're doing. We have to do X, Y, Z. Communications is critical.
So it's interesting. Kate and I are both recovering IBMers. So when you look at that organization, in many ways, the first level where you were actually managing people was more equivalent to sort of the sergeants. It more in line with squad leaders than it did lieutenants and on up, using the military analogy. And it's interesting. You'd see a lot of people who would do very well in that position, and then if they got promoted where their primary duty was doing budgets, all of a sudden they're like, yeah, hey, don't you have some technical work that I can do? And that's where people tended to switch back over to the technical tracks, where they brought in a first line manager to do all the people management nonsense. Sorry, that's...
I want to put PowerPoint in with the budget thing, because so many people have just been crushed by being forced
before
to...
PowerPoint.
Yes.
But
they used to write code, now they do PowerPoints.
Yeah, and the people who've been doing PowerPoint for a decade, while we were writing code, beat us to death. So let's not do that. But if nobody takes those first line manager roles, the folks who are doing great technical work tend not to get promoted. Because if it's only Dilbert, the pointy-haired boss, in those first line manager roles, it's the weasel gets promoted and everybody else gets shafted. So it's...
That was violent language.
You didn't say inaccurate. So it's in many ways, a lot of those first line management positions where we're talking about, you have to acquire a little bit of soft skills beyond just being able to crank out code or blow stuff up. There's a lot of value in there. In many ways, you look at those first line management positions, and they're more on the follow me model than they are on the, let me lay out our corporate objectives sort of things. So if you're looking to stay technical, you don't have to not do management. In many ways, it becomes in order for all of the technical folks to thrive, somebody has to take the position.
Managing or working with peers is one of the hardest social engineering tasks that there is, and unfortunately that's the role that the CISO has to do a lot of the time in order to get things done. Unless they actually have the root passwords to everything, they're going to have to convince peers across the organization to work with them and to get things done. So it's very, if you think soft skills is just appealing to hierarchy, you're completely wrong. It is what you do with people in the absence of any authority that you have.
Yeah, so I was working for a government place, and one of the things I used to do is Nessus and all that, scanning for vulnerabilities. We had a couple of different organizations. You had network, you had Linux admins, you had Windows admins. And so what I did, and this is kind of technical, but it's also soft skills approach. So what I used to do, I used to, way back in the day, I used to be a Solaris admin as well. So basically we had Solaris stuff for Unix people. So I understood how to do patching and configurations and stuff. So I would take the vulnerability report over and say, man, you got all these bones, and here's how you fix it. Or you have this Windows thing, you need to do this domain policy, and this is how you set that up. It's actually going the extra mile to learn a little bit more, but you can actually take that to all the all your peers, because like the truth is you just don't work with security people. It's all those other people that you work with. And so as much as you can make it a layup for them, you're like a point guard, another sports ball analogy. You're giving it out, you're trying to make everybody's life easier. And that's how I've done, how do I help other people in the organization get better? Maybe you learn a little bit about how to code or run a scanner, or empower them to run the scan them dang selves. So it's always a way to work with those organizations and uplift them as well.
So I used to be a CISO, and when I first graduated, let's call it that, into the CISO role, we had a pen test report come in and there were all these things wrong. I was very upset, and I had a meeting with all of the bosses, and I was like, hell and fire, we have to fix these things, and they just all voted no. And after I went to my director, I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, Tanya, you can't just yell at us, industry best practice, blah, blah, blah. You have to explain it in words that we understand. We're all really smart. That's why we all have these jobs. But we don't know the security stuff that you know. So you have to explain it in a way so we understand, how's this going to affect my developers? How's this going to affect our operations? Like, what are the actual risks to our business? So I came back the next week and I was ready. And I explained exactly what, so because we're not using these security headers, this could happen. If you click on this link I made for you, here's this proof of concept where this happened. You see the risk here. This could, and everyone voted unanimously yes. A week later, and he's like, you have to learn how to communicate clearly. You have to talk their language, not your language.
One last word from Marcus.
Yeah, one last word. Hey, I want to shout out Kate. Kate's amazing.
Yeah.
If y'all don't know.
That's so sweet.
So
That's really nice.
a crazy story. 4 or 5 years ago, whatever, Kate actually introduced me to my best and biggest customer at LastCon.
Cool.
So I appreciate you, and she does so much for the community. Tireless worker. She curses me out a lot behind the scenes if she sees me doing something crazy. She takes care of me. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is awesome. Okay. Thanks to everybody on the panel. Great job.
Oh, and Duo is hiring. If you're an AppSec person, come talk to me.
Soft skill.
Soft skill.